Good evening, everyone. Dan Jennings here with your Blue Wave Report, Demcast USA Candidates Corner. Tonight on the show, we have Daniel Carlino running for the Public Service Commission in Montana in the 4th District. Good evening, Daniel. How are you tonight?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Dan, for having me on. I'm
You're
excited.
very, you're very welcome. All right, the first thing I think I want to do is have you explain to the viewers what a public service commission does, why they're important, because I think a lot of people tend to overlook that because it's a down ballot race. And then tell us why you jumped into the race.
Right. Thanks, Dan. So the Public Service Commission, they regulate the monopolies for our state. And the government has granted monopolies to the utilities such as our energy, our water, our telecommunications, our waste management and sewer, and as well as railroad. So the Public Service Commission is really important in Montana right now because of the energy company Northwestern Energy. They're the monopoly, and most of Montanans go through them for their energy sources. And the Public Service Commission has allowed them to double their profits in the past 5 years off of Montana ratepayers. And also, they've allowed them to crush renewable energy projects every step of the way, really. So the main reason that I got into this is because the energy monopoly is proposing a lot of fracked gas and coal investments in Montana, and they wrote their next 20-year energy procurement plan. And there's no investments in renewable energy, and they're just heading deeper into the coal to maximize short-term profits for their monopoly. So the Public Service Commission stands between Montana ratepayers and these monopolies. So
Okay.
we need a Public Service Commission that can actually be transparent with the public and make sure that we're holding the monopolies accountable to provide these utilities for us without taking advantage of Montanans through their rates.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the net metering controversy with Northwestern?
Right. So net metering is when people are able to harvest their own energy through solar panels or wind at their house, and it goes back into the grid. And that's what the net metering is, since battery storage isn't as well as it needs to be right now to hold that energy all the time. So Northwestern Energy proposed this rate case to the Public Service Commission last year, and that rate case was going to give rate reductions to companies like Walmart and other big corporations, and it was going to give major rate increases for Montana households and farmers through the form of net metering. So right now in Montana, we get incentives for our net metering. If you harvest your own energy, you'll get credits and make sure that so that you are paid for this energy that you're producing as it goes back into the grid. So Northwestern Energy wanted to cut those rates to make it really to where it wouldn't be affordable. And they were going to add a brand new demand charge. Right now, we don't have a demand charge in Montana for net metering. And that would be a price that net metering customers pay just to be part of the grid that everyone else is a part of. And that was going to make it unprofitable for Montanans. So luckily, the people of Montana showed up in numbers, and we wrote letters to the editor, and we organized, and we did not let that case get passed. So net metering is protected for now.
Okay. One of the things you bring up with your waste management ideas is the use of scrap metal. Can you expand on what you want to do with scrap metal in your state?
Right. So basically right now, there's really no incentive for people to recycle these old materials or compost, and 70% of the waste that goes away is from construction materials. So if we're trying to handle this waste problem, which is also involved with the greenhouse gas emissions, we need to take on this large construction materials. And the idea I'm proposing, I'm gonna have to work with the legislature to get this passed, but is to give incentives by paying people for these scrap metals, and then use them to reuse in a new project, because that's 70% of our waste. So I'm hoping that we could give government incentives to take these giant construction materials such as scrap metals, et cetera, and put them to good use and not just to waste, because right now it's just too easy for people to throw things away.
Sure. Another thing you put forward is infrastructure, telecommunications, internet, and rail accessibility. I know in a lot of rural areas in the country, internet access is very limited, if at all available. Satellite internet is insanely expensive and the bandwidth is horrendous. What do you think the PSC should do to try to get internet to all Montanans?
Right. So whenever these telecommunication monopolies want to make a decision, it has to go through the Public Service Commission, and it is in favor for these internet companies and phone companies to supply this to the urban areas and leave out rural districts because it's not as profitable for them.
Mhm.
So I think the Public Service Commission needs to make sure that all these decisions are prioritizing rural areas and our tribal nations in Montana at the forefront of this, because it's not really in the telecommunication monopoly's favor, because the money for them is in the urban areas, but there's many people spread all across this giant state of Montana. So we need to make sure that we're not leaving them behind. And that ideally we would be able to have Wi-Fi everywhere for internet access for people. But right now, the main issue is that 200,000 Montanans, about a fifth of the population, don't have cell phone service at their house or in the surrounding area. And I think it's a safety issue for 911 service at the very least. But I think it's something that I want to work with these communities on to see what would work best for them.
Okay, two more questions for you here. Actually, one I'm just going to throw a name out there, and I'm going to let you free base on it.
Sure.
Keystone Pipeline.
Right. So the Keystone XL pipeline is actually about to start construction here through Montana, starting in March or April. So it's coming up very soon. They're setting up man camps for workers across the pipeline right now. And, you know, I've been outspoken about this for a long time. This is why I started the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge campaign in Montana, where I've confronted all of our politicians, both our senators, our congressmen, our governor, all support the Keystone XL pipeline, and they all take money from the fossil fuel industry at the same time. And the reason that I don't support this, not only is it terrible for the climate and for the environment to add this in our indigenous communities where they're trying to put this pipeline through, it's actually not even good for jobs. These are going to be temporary jobs, and this pipeline is for a Canadian company to send oil through the US faster to ship it over to China. This is not for the US in any way, and I'm strongly against all new fossil fuel infrastructure.
Okay, one final thing. One of my pet peeves, we were discussing this off the air, is lack of transparency in government. And I know I've read a couple of articles in the Montana newspapers discussing the fact the Public Service Commission is very closed when it comes to transparency. What will you do personally if elected, and what will you do to try to transform the board as well to make it more open to the citizens of Montana?
Right. So something that just got passed by the Public Service Commission, this was allowing the energy monopoly, Northwestern Energy, to conceal the costs of their coal power from Montanans. There's no reason for them to do that except to help the monopoly make profits off of dirty fuels. And what I will do in the Public Service Commission is not only make sure that things like that don't get passed, but I've already vouched through this whole time to have weekly office hours on the Public Service Commission. And this will be, I've got 7 counties in my district, so it would likely be rotating between counties and the Flathead Tribal Nation, which is also in my district, and making sure that I'm making that information available to people to come talk to me and see what they need to say about these utilities. And also for the Public Service Commission as a whole, there's a lot of corruption going on currently in the PSC, as in people receiving money for their campaigns from the monopolies that they're supposed to be regulating, and people concealing information like this. So I will do what I can to write letters to the editor and make sure that this is all open information. And also I would like to, not only will I have my own social media and email list, I would like to be able to put things onto the PSC's official website with every case. So before these things get passed, people hear about them, not afterwards.
Okay. Great. Well, Daniel, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight, and I wish you the best of luck. I believe your election, is it a primary or is it a general coming up in June?
I have a primary June 2nd, and then the general will be with everything else November 3rd.
Okay, great. Well, again, wish you the best of luck. Thank you for being on the show tonight. If anyone out there is looking for more information on Daniel's campaign, please go out to our website, equalvotelocal.com. We have the interactive map up there for the 51 state database. Yes, I'm calling Puerto Rico a state. They should be. And you'll be able to find clickable links to all of Daniel's social media pages. All righty.
I have a website as well.
Yep, go ahead and plug it.
Oh yeah, Carlino2020.com as well as full of information on there and ways to help.
There we go. And as I see my child come sneaking in behind me to get into the shot, he, as always, will do the closing of the show. What do we tell him, Nick? As always,
don't just comment at.
Don't just comment at. That's right. All righty, everyone. Have a good evening. For Demcast USA, this has been Dan Jennings with your Candidates Corner. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Dan.
And